Hey everybody, welcome to another GMG review. Today we're taking a look at 2nd edition Burrows and Badgers, a skirmish game of anthropomorphic animals by Mike Lovejoy, illustrated by Peter Johnson, and inspired by all the wonderful sort of like children's books like Redwall, right? Gary Chalk's fantastic artwork, where you get to see these sort of mystical events that take place right under our noses between the forest critters all fighting each other in weird medieval combat. It's got, again, beautiful full color illustrations and is, I think, coming in at just under 200 pages, over 200 pages, under 300 pages, 272 credits in the back. So we're gonna flip back there real fast. Peter Johnson from Tooting London did the illustrations. The photos and stuff are the work of Michael and Joe Lovejoy, who is also the author. And then some acknowledgements, of course, for all of the team that helped play test and do the promotion and sort of like the design of the book. So what is Burrows and Badgers? Like, you want to say Badgers and Burrows. It is a miniatures agnostic, although there are wonderful miniatures available out there, especially from, I believe it's Oathsworn are the ones that are in here. Skirmish game between small groups of up to 10 models, where you are just hang out in Albion, which is the largest of the Britannic Isles, so sort of an imaginary fantasy England. And the year is 799. Northumbria stretches from the River Tweed to the Himbri estuary. Once the royal house of Othere ruled the entire kingdom and exercised control over much of the border territory. In recent years, however, the iron grip of the Others is weakening. To the south lie the Freebeast Republic of Mearse. Then the Fox families have gradually extended their sphere of influence, promising equal opportunities to all. For many beasts from the lowly backgrounds who have chafed under the rule of the king, a life where all are valued for their own worth is appealing. The border region, in which there's always been like a crazy sort of like bloody reputation of the hill clans. They are another sort of like faction inside of this. And then the king of Othere, Redwolf, is sort of trying to keep like the peace in the kingdom, well, or his iron grip, depending upon which faction that you are that you're sort of participating in. There's lots of types of beast. Mice are the most numerous. There's also hedgehogs, squirrels who are nimble and stealthy, kinds of birds, but everything's kind of represented here, from badgers to birds to the other various mammalian creatures that live in England, because that's sort of the inspiration here. My favorite version of this is to think that this is like the past. This is the history, the historical past behind the universe of Wes Anderson's Fantastic Mr. Fox. So this guy has Bill Murray's voice, this Badger right here, because he's one of the ancestors of Badger from that, and Fox, of course, is George Clooney. So what do you need in this one? Some dice. You want generally sort of like the whole gamut of polyhedral dice. So D4s, D6s, and so on. Often you'll be asked to modify dice roll with pluses and minuses, and no dice roll can ever go below 0 with modifiers. You may have to roll more than one dice at a time, which is then denoted by the numbers. Usual sort of miniature wargaming convention here. And miniature figurines are also ideally about 30 mil based models, and these ones, the official ones, are from Oathsworn themselves, which you will see tons of pictures of throughout the book. The game is usually played on a 3x3 board, but you can come up to 48x48 as well, and other smaller, weirder sizes work too. You want to have, pretty sort of like medieval, green and pleasant land side of terrain, which is generally what you'll see in this book too. And then a tape measure in inches and your roster sheets. And there's a variety of roster sheets here in the back, lovingly illustrated. And I believe there's already a PDF of this online, but I love the illustrations on these for you to play through. And you will see that this is a character-driven game. Not really any peons in this game. Think of it like, if you want an analog like Mordheim, where everyone is sort of like doing their role, and you're kind of guiding an adventuring party against other adventuring parties. General rules: re-rolling dice, you can only re-roll once, letting the dice decide. We've tried to cover as much as possible in the rules. However, you might want to both roll a d12 to see who gets to see how rules interaction works if it's kind of broken down, and re-roll any ties, and then line of sight, get down there and do a model's eye view. Measuring distances: you can measure distances in inches, and the rules have a inch symbol. It's worth measuring that you can measure them at any time. And then leaving the table: if you leave, you're not dead. A model that's forced to leave the table, such as being barged or pushed, may return the table at the start of the next turn, placing the model touching the table edge at the same point they left. So if you leave on purpose, you can't come back. If you're pushed off by accident, you can walk back on. Look at this cool, was it Doppelsnoldner with his Zweihander, and another Badger. The Badgers are of all different classes in this game. The card mechanic is a roll-off. The player creates an action with one of their models, and they will often have to roll off. Roll-off involves one of the model's stats, which one would depend on the type of thing. So like if you have a strike, you're gonna roll a strike roll-off against a block roll-off typically. And then, so those two opposed stats would dictate how the roll-off works. So an example, Fleabite Hardpad, I'm assuming that's, Fleabite Hardpad might be like a dog, is searching a ruined building for a hidden chest. His awareness statistic is D6, so he rolls a D6 and scores a 5. There's no modifiers, the total's 5. The chest has a hidden difficulty of 3, so it's a target number based when it's not opposed. And Fleabite's action is a success with a result of 2. Fleabite attacks Garrick Longear. His strike statistic is D8, so he rolls a D8, scoring a 4. He has no modifiers add or subtract, and then Garrick Longear has a block of D6 and scores a 3. He is carrying a buckler, which gives him +1 to block rolls, so he adds it and totals 4. And the result is 0, so there's no successes, and Garrick's attack, Fleabite's attack fails. So you're trying to equal or beat, if you're defending, you're trying to equal or beat the attack roll basically to stop the damage, and there'll be various modifiers for like your equipment and stuff like that. Perfect rolls and disastrous rolls. Now obviously perfect is the highest number on dice, disastrous is the lowest. If you roll perfect, then luck is always with you. The roll-off has gone unusually well, and you can add +7 to your total. In this way, even the weakest of warriors can win with luck against powerful enemies. When rolling a dice in a roll-off, as well as perfects, you will sometimes get a disastrous when you roll a 1. If you score as disastrous, then luck has deserted you, and the roll-off has gone unusually poorly. However, the model gets a fate point. Note the perfect and disastrous roll applies to only dice rolls for roll-offs, not for dice rolled for any other reasons. So whenever you're trying to roll against a target number or against an opponent's stat. In Burrows Badgers, each player contains a band made of a small number of models on page 38. Each model is represented in the tabletop by a miniature, and the model's abilities in the game are determined by their stats. So movement, obviously how far you can go. Strike, hitting and things in combat. Blocking a strike. Range and nimbleness, again opposed. Concealment, which is how you are hiding against awareness typically, and then fortitude and presence are the last two. So presence is like how you intimidate people or influence people with speech. Fortitude is of course your willpower, courage, and determination. Again, they are usually opposed stats. The turn sequence, initiative. To determine who takes the first action, you'll roll off, usually with a d12. To do so, each player chooses one of their models, makes a roll off with their nimbleness. If the result is a draw, roll off again. The player with the highest total wins the initiative. They may activate a model, which must be the model with the nimbleness stat that they rolled. Once the model's activation is performed, their activation is over, and the model cannot be activated again this turn. And then play continues clockwise, the player to the right choosing one of their models to activate. So you start with hopefully your most nimble model if you want to win that roll, or your least if you're trying to not go first. And then seizing the initiative, a player may interrupt the usual activation sequence and seize the initiative by spending one of the model's fate points. The interrupting model cannot have activated yet this turn. This model may have spent fate points and will not activate and perform their actions. Then play returns to the interrupted player. So what's interesting is that you have a kind of like a catch-up mechanic. If you ever really beat for roll with a 1, you're gonna get a fate point. And they can be spent in various ways, but one of them is if you're going clockwise, if you're going back and forth and someone's about to go, you could interrupt to try and seize the initiative and go again. And then your actions, you can focus, which allows you to improve the chances of doing something. You can move, which is obviously move in inches. Barge, which is move and push into someone. Charge, which is push in and strike. Attack, which is just strike. Guard, shoot, cast, sneak, search, interact. They're all pretty self-explanatory. And every model can do 2 actions per turn. When declaring action, the player must state which model is doing it, and then state the target of any actions if there are any. The model's first action may be declared and completed before the second action is declared. The model can perform the same action twice, but if they do so, they're -2 for doubling down to whatever their modifiers are. Focus gives you +2, so if you focused and then hit somebody, you'd be +2 to the total roll. Move, you move your stat in inches. There's no need to roll a dice. The move may be up to the maximum value of the dice that you roll. So your move stat is still a D something, and that's used when you have to make a move test, right? Because you might still have movement challenges. But your actual movement in inches, if you move D8, you'd move 8 inches. If you move D6, you'd move 6 inches, etc. And you'll see that later on when we go to character creation. And then we got our standard rules for moving and going through difficult terrain. Moving into a base-to-base contact, barging, which is pushing into people. I'm not gonna spend too much time on the nitty-gritty here, but obviously the idea being that if you can envision a model doing something, and certain animal types, they have like a more jumpy nature if they're a rabbit or something like that. You can envision them jumping. You can do that kind of thing in the game. Interacting, and then wounds. A model who suffers one or more wounds will mark off one of their wound boxes. There are 17 wound boxes. Mark them off starting with the top at number 1, and then go left to right. For each shaded wound box crossed off, a model suffers -1 to roll-offs. So you can see that when you have 17 points of damage, at 4, 7, 10, and 13, that's when you would take damage that will result in you having like a -4 overall to all your stat rolls. And then heroic sacrifice. At any time after a model's taken enough wounds to suffer penalties to roll-offs, they may declare a heroic sacrifice when declaring an action. The next roll-off is made at normal, but instead of suffering penalties equal to the number of shaded wound boxes, they gain +7 bonus. However, the supreme effort overcomes and they go out of action automatically. So basically you can like, it's the like Gorman and Vasquez blowing up the grenade at the end of Aliens, you know what I mean, thing where you can kind of have like your heroic last stand. Although without any grenades, because this is a game about small animals fighting each other. So yeah, a really crunchy rule set. Obviously there's tons of conditions like sneaking, going berserk, badgers, you know, doing badger attacks, being stunned, burning, blinded, all these can be done by various effects. So the core mechanics are in the first, 30 pages of the rules. And that's nice because it gives you some context for how all this stuff works when you're actually like going and collecting your miniatures and then making a band. Now the lore for this game is actually fairly developed, and that means that you have an allegiance for your faction before you start building them, and your band will get some bonuses and penalties and access to things based upon what they have. So like you could be Royalists, Rogues, Free Beasts, Kindred, Witch Hunters, Wildlings, part of the Arcade Conclave, Undead, be like zombie mice, Rotiers, and Hillfolk. And these will all give you different things based on your allegiance. You have a den, and your den is sort of your base building that you do in the game. And each allegiance has an archetype, either warrior, ranger, all-rounder, or cunning folk. This determines your advances that you get when you roll for your experience. And then allegiances may have a restricted choice of magical archetypes. So for instance, witch hunters don't tend to use mages. Any magic users in the band may use an archetype from that list. If the band contains more than one magic user, they do not have to choose the same magical archetype, but will still choose from the list allowed by their allegiance. And then each allegiance also has a support quest. These are quests that can be fulfilled to gain fate and experience points in battles, in addition to the normal main and side quests. So every mission has quests, and then your faction gives you little things that you're kind of always trying to do that you can also do to earn experience and fate points. The cool idea being that like you always generally are trying to do something, but the what and the how is going to change every quest or every mission that you play. And then we've got our basics. So we have models in the band. A new band must choose a minimum of 2 models, and a band can have a maximum of 10. Choose the species for each model and pay the penny cost listed below. The limit of 10 applies even during campaign play, so never any more than 10 guys. No more than 8 models can be large on a 40 mil, and no more than 6 massive 50 mil base models. Again, this applies during the campaign play as well as to a new band. Any species listed as rare can only be taken once. So for instance, a band could only have a platypus and a tortoise, but not 2 tortoises. All right, so band creation. A summary. You get 350 pennies to spend. Pick an allegiance and record your den upgrades, and this gives you your roster. A new band must have a minimum of 2 models. A band can contain a maximum of 10, with the restrictions I just talked about. And all models must be given at least 1 piece of equipment, a weapon, armor, or an item, or at least 1 spell. Which equipment and spells is up to you and depends on your allegiance. Your leader can upgrade 1 stat by 1 dice level to a maximum of D12 and choose a skill, and this adds 2 to the model's level. So if you were at level 1, you'd be at level 3. Your second, who's your second in command, may choose a skill and then adds 1 to their level, and a model may be made into a magic user simply by choosing at least 1 spell from a magical archetype that you're allowed to have. Then they receive weak 1 and delicate 1 skills for every spell they have. Small models are at level 1, medium models at level 2, large models at level 3, and massive models at level 4. Your band rating is the total number of levels in your models, and then as well as miniatures you represent your band, you must have 3 objective markers around 30mm across. So this gives you the opportunity to make cool objective markers that kind of fit the theme of what your warband is, or your allegiance. And that's it. So we then get a massive number of species that you could play. So, and it goes by base size. So the small beasts, for instance, could be mouse and dormouse, shrew, a bird, a noctule bat, a great crested newt, a shrew knight errant, a mistgast, a tracker grub, a tack grub or damping grub from the stag beetle grubs. And they all get all kinds of skills on top of it. So like for instance, a noctule bat gets flight, unarmed, fighter, natural hunter, gifted, delicate 2, and dark sense. And these are all things that will affect them over the course of the game. Tracker grubs get bloodhound, unarmed fighter, or armless. And then medium beasts can have things like hedgehogs, squirrels, moles, weasels, and stoats. Black rats, ferrets and polecats, cats, toads, frogs, adders, marmots, water voles. Like, if you could think of it, and it's generally a thing that exists in Europe, it's probably gonna be here. Large would be on 40s, things like hares, wildcats, great brown rats, foxes, otters, birds, raptors, like a large hawk, armadillos, fennecs, mistgasts, and then massive beasts are things like badgers, beavers, birds, raptors, hounds, and mistgasts. So no bears, right? We're not getting up to like tigers and lions and stuff like that. The idea here is it's the little animals that live in, you know, like your backyard, and they're having crazy, weird adventures. We go through different factions. So, for instance, I'll do the Royalist just so you guys can get an idea of what it means. But there are a whole bunch. I think there's like 10. Free beasts, wildlings, the servants of the old ones. No. The undead, which I love that there's friggin' all kinds of undeady monsters. And they get different starting equipment options, and of course different bonuses and stuff for the allegiance. So the kingdom of Northumbria faces difficult times. King Redwall has not been seen for some time, and his whereabouts is a source of much rumor. His unpopular but venomously ambitious son, Prince Reinert, rules as regent in his stead. So a real like Prince John, Robin Hood sort of sitch, right? Richard the Lionheart is out crusading, and Prince John is doing terrible things at home. Face the endless politicking and covert operations by the free beasts, the Robin Hoods, with the support of many of the small but loyal bands, effectively members of the Royal Army, but acting as a detached Dewey, they carry out dangerous and deniable missions across the land. So a Royalist band is basically like they have like a charter, right? They're not necessarily part of the army, but they do the bidding of the king. They get some bonuses. So expert training, 2 of your models can improve their strike dice by 1 level to a maximum of D12, but it increases their level by 1. They begin with Pels and Training Ground upgrades in their dens. Their allegiance is Warrior for upgrades when they learn experience. And magical archetypes, they can choose from Natural, Light, Noble, Unbound, Divine, and Elementalism. And their support quest is The King Wills It. Any model takes an enemy model out of action using an attack action, including the bonus attack from charging, or a free attack when you move out of base contact, gains a fate and experience point. And they get cool weapons like Mastersmith weapons, warbows, heavy crossbows, calivers, very heavy armor, silk undershirts, telescopes, relics, and anti-venom. And that gives you an idea of like the things you'll get from one of these warbands things. So for instance, the rogues get a starting bonus, quiet and quick. 2 of your models can improve their move or nimbleness or concealment by a dice level, so like that kind of idea. The free beasts get a special rule called Deep Pockets. You have an extra 25 pennies to spend on band creation. In addition, in the post-battle sequence, when checking for the availability of rare items, you can roll 3d6 rather than 2d6 because it's good at finding stuff. And then the Kindred would have a support quest like Scout. Reach base contract with the enemy's objectives and mark base contacts with the enemy's objectives and mark them by performing an interact action. Any model who marks an enemy objective gains a fate point and experience point. If all the enemy's objectives are marked, all your models gain a fate point, and each objective can only be marked once. So their whole thing is they're trying to get back these little relics or like purify things. And then, witch hunters, for instance, their magic can be light, noble, and divine, but they don't get the more, like esoteric stuff because obviously they're hunting witches. And so, once you've picked one of these and you start to build out your crew with your 350 pennies, the routiers, the royal army is made up of the retinues of this king, his lord, and his barons. They're well-trained soldiers. These guys are also like melee dudes. I love the undead animal thing there. That's so cool. And then again, so we've got most of our like warband creation stuff in here, and we're just getting to magic. And we've got another 200 pages to go. So there are a million little like archetypes for magic. The bulk of this book is actually this kind of stuff, right? Illusionary magic, detailing equipment, like 2-handed weapons and spears. So this is a really crunchy game when it comes to like what you're wearing, what you're doing, what you have. But I do like that this is in, I think it's A6 is the scale for this one. A5 is 1 down, so I think this is the A6 scale. So it doesn't feel like it's overwhelming walls of text because they have scaled the book and filled it with art nicely. Yeah, the silk understrip, it's maybe put as armor, item, or special. Silk garments allow easy removal from missiles from a wounded beast's body. A model with a silk understrip may reverse any wounds suffered from shoot actions using bows, war bows, light crossbows, or heavy crossbows by 1. Magic items, magical equipment, all kinds of skills, and then we're into missions. Okay, So playing a game, and obviously campaign play is the goal here. You're gonna play a linked series of narrative battles. I love this D'Artagnan rabbit, if you're into the Three Musketeers. It's designed to be played as a campaign using the same band over several games. This gives you the opportunity to watch your band develop and see your starting models gain new skills while new warriors join and bands grow to be ever more famous. You build the standard thing, like the standard 350 point or whatever your archetype gives you for pennies. And then you get a pre-battle phase, a battle phase, and a post-battle phase. So in pre-battle, you make a roll on the main quest table, see what your main quest is gonna be. And then you're gonna actually determine what your side quests are. So these are like the secondary thing you're trying to do. Fate points and band ratings, assign fate points and compare the band ratings. Leaders start with 3 fate points, seconds with 2, and all other models start with 1. Your allegiance to other bonuses, such as like wandering results, may also provide additional fate points. Make a note of the highest band rating and have all other bands subtract their band rating from it. For every 2 full points of difference, the lower rating gains a bonus fate point to assign to who you want. And then development. Each player deploys their models and objectives in accordance with the instructions of the main quest. When deploying, each player takes it in turns to place one model until all have been placed on the table. In all cases, follow the deployment requirements as closely as possible, but make allowances for terrain pieces and other features. Some main quests have fixed endpoints, so like it ends on turn 4, then roll a d6. On a 6, the game ends. On roll 1 to 5, it continues. If it keeps going, that's the escalation of like, does it end or not? So if like it could end on 4, there's a better chance it ends on 5, better chance it ends on 6. The usual like GW way of doing that. And then to battle, which is the battle phase, which we saw at the beginning of the book. And then we look for treasure, allocate experience, and do recovery if anybody gets injured. There's jobs afterwards, like off-duty tasks. You can labor, wander, train, or rest. So if you train, you get an experience point. If you rest, some minor injuries require you to rest. Labor, for each model that labors, roll a d6 and add or subtract the model's strong or weak skill value. And see how many labor points they produce. And keeping it running total, and this allows you to improve your den. And then wander. For each model that wanders, decide if they stay local, go far afield, or go into the wild, rolling a d12 in the appropriate wanderings table. Models may join forces with other wanderings if you roll a single d12 for each group of wanderers that out, but for every model additionally, you get to roll plus or minus 1. So you can adjust the stats if you go wandering together. And then hire new people, trade, upkeep your models need upkeep, do your labor and materials, spend labor points and materials to buy new den upgrades, and reallocate any equipment between your models. So you can die, obviously, on a 1. Roll a d20. If the roll result is impossible to apply, such as reducing a stat that's already a d4, then count as a roll of a 9, so enfeebled. And all of these obviously have various lasting effects that you can, like grotesque appearance. Reduce their presence stat by a dice level, and this reduces their model's level by 1. The model may choose to rest in stage 4, add 15 pennies to the band's pension, which is what they have to pay for upkeeps. Niggling wounds, keep it out of the game. Pretty standard stuff. And the wanderings table, this is your post-game sort of like events almost when they go wandering. They could end up being a bouncer, laboring at a farm, like to get a bountiful harvest. Work for a gunsmith, he gives you a superior portion of black powder. And these are kind of just random advantages. And the plus minus by sending people in pairs is handy because it allows you to move up and down the table to get the result that you want. And the further you go, the weirder the things that can happen. Like finding fresh corpses that have died of the plague. If you go into a deadly den, high in the hills, you find a remote mysterious den and disturb one of the almost mythical great cave bears. Make a roll on the major injuries table. 3 to 4, the den belongs to a dark cult and they sap your essence. You start with 0 fate points next battle and can't gain any more from disastrous rolls. Or 5, 6, the den's empty, but while you're out there, the foes raid your den. One of your den upgrades is destroyed and removed from your band table. So lots of RNG for like things that can happen. And then your advances lets you do things like buy new skills. And the archetype of your warband will determine which of these columns you roll on. So for instance, if you roll on the warrior table, it's more likely to get things like stat increases, right, in the mid-band here, whereas it's more likely to get a new skill for a ranger. All-rounders, it's just generally gonna be the same all the way across. And then purchasing things, and we get into all the main quests, like an open battle, ambushing a rival camp, ambushed by the camp, defending the hall, things you found, surprise attacking people, taking and holding objectives, lost in the dark, rescuing a model, hunting moles, den raids, actually raiding the opponent's like location, lost and alone, having somebody like cut off, people come to rescue them, interrogate a prisoner, And these are just the main quests, and there's all kinds of side quests on top of that. Geez, like 25 of them. This is plenty. Nope, like 50, 30 of them. It's a lot. And these are the bonus things you can do on top of your abilities from your allegiance. And then finally some bonus rules, like having it be dark outside, having really bad luck. Some cool mercenaries like Lady Jane Death, a large beast. She's a fox. A raccoon huntress, Wika Teledega. Grommy the mouse burglar, and Von Woder, the otter mercenary. And these are all like the dramatis personae that you can encounter, fighting with cannons, and then, yeah, our beautiful roster sheets. And that's it. Burrows and Badgers 2nd edition. So this is a really fun one if you want to introduce really anybody with a sense of whimsy to miniature wargaming. I'm going to plan to play this with Kat because she loves all of the D&D, like she's in her D&D club at school. She has a big love of all the D&D characters that are like animal related. She's playing, I can't remember what the race is called, but like frog people right now. And this allowing her to paint some miniatures and play like a tabletop game where she gets to use them more often. I think she'd have a lot of fun doing with her friends. So it's a great kind of segue for that kind of like whimsical, fun, creative side of things. And of course, generally, this is the 2nd edition of the game. They've got the rules kind of really dialed in now, so that there's just a ton of random events and cool things that happen in between to kind of like have your story emerge sort of naturally as you play. Obviously, the quality of the book is great. I like this. I like this size. The old one was in, I think, full 8.5 by 11, like full hardback size. I think this size is way handier for playing the game. Like it just transports the game, and it's still, there's all the information you want is on the page. This isn't as crunchy a rules. Like the core mechanics aren't complicated enough and crunchy enough. Mostly what you'll be referencing is skills and abilities, and like the keywords and stuff like that. So it's quick to flip through and just generally easy to carry around. So thanks for Osprey sending this along. If you like 1st edition, this is just, I think, a more refined version of that game. And it'll probably be, I think, a popular one with the like artistic crowd for making just cool, cute dioramas and like playing with a bit of whimsy, because obviously that's the whole intent of this game. So good job to Osprey and of course Mike Lovejoy for his continuing iterations of Burrows and Badgers. And go check out Osprey Miniatures because there's some lovely models there too. Big thanks for watching. We'll see you for more GMG reviews. To the mash.